good afternoon, whatever time of day it is that you are listening, folks. Thank you very, very much for listening. Date today is the 8th of March, year of our Lord, 2024. Welcome to yet another edition of The Coping Hour, hosted by Nicholas Hinkle, a.k.a. Motown Noah. Got a big show for you guys today. Actually, this time. Usually I say that, and I just kind of bullshit my way through, 60 minutes of the show, and by the end of it, I'm like, I don't really have anything else to talk about, and then the show is just kind of over, inexplicably. We do have a big one today. There's a chance that we run a little bit long. I feel like I never actually need to say that. Usually you just look at how long it actually ends up being at the end, and you can decide for yourself, wow, it was kind of a long one today. But we do actually have some stuff to talk about. Move is, it's going well. Every day you still got to see a bunch of boxes in the background, probably in the same spot that they were in for the last episode. But every day we chip away a little bit more and more. We are doing a lot. It's just super overwhelming. And as soon as I figure out like where I want to put the camera and what I want this setup to look like, I'm going to feel so much better about it. But I have an announcement. I got something special to tell you guys about. I said about a month ago, I've said it here and there a few times, that at some point over the next few months, I will be going on some sort of a sabbatical. Not a hiatus, but a sabbatical. Because I feel like a hiatus, well, I don't need semantics. And I think it's probably time to tell you guys why exactly that is. I haven't planned this at all. I have no idea how to tell you guys this. My girlfriend and I have agreed to terms on a contract that will make us the happiest parents of all time. And the day that we're looking to close on having a child is May 1st. So she has officially entered she's well into the third trimester at this point. She is officially 8 months. I think this last Wednesday was 32 weeks. She's pregnant. I'm going to be a dad. Feels really good to finally be, saying this into a microphone. I feel like I've been kind of keeping this major thing from you guys for a really long time. I don't really know what else to say. Obviously we're elated. This is the best thing that's ever happened to us. And that doesn't even really do it justice. For those of you out there listening to the show who have kids or maybe, are with somebody who's pregnant right now, expecting, what this feels like. And, not to be that guy who tries to gatekeep happiness, but it's like, holy shit, you really don't know until it starts to happen, like what it feels like. At this point, like I said, we just entered month number 8. So we've had a lot of time to process it. And now I can say, well, a lot of the reason why we have more boxes than we normally would is because of how much baby shit we have, right? Got to assemble the crib, got like a diaper changing table, got all this random stuff. Kind of putting that on the back burner for now, kind of taking care of all of our stuff because, we have time to figure all that out later. But does that explain a little bit why we just moved into this fancy schmancy house? There you go. It's because we're having a kid. Well, also because it was time to be adults and do the right thing. And just, invest in real estate, as they say, as if I say that as if we plan on like selling this place. It's like, no, this is just kind of our home. The bank is like, you're going to live here for like 30 years. Okay. All right, cool. That's fine. This is, again, the best thing that's ever happened to us. It is a boy. I didn't say that, kind of buried the lead. We did find that out super early on. It was weird because we kind of went into it and originally we were like, it's a girl. And then like a week or two before we found out, and this was obviously months ago, we just kind of woke up one day and we were like, oh my God, it's a boy. It's just a vibes thing. Like you just kind of feel it. Like it just is a boy. And sure enough, we went and figured it out. And you guys have never seen my dog. There he is. He's playing around on the couch. I don't think I've ever shown you guys my dog before. Getting to see the whole family today, I guess. And honestly, in the same way that we were convinced that it was going to be a boy and then we ended up being right, we're convinced that like May 1st is such an arbitrary date that it's not going to end up being true. Like he's 100% going to come a little bit early. Praying he's not a 420 baby. Like praying that doesn't happen. That would not be funny. Like if it was 10 years ago and I was like 14, I'd be like, or 15. I'd be like, oh my God, yes, a 420 baby. I don't want that anymore. And then the alternative is like, she doesn't want May 4th, right? Which makes sense to me. I would be like, I don't know, that's kind of sick. And that would just be, you'd be coming a little bit late at that point. Names. Oh my God. How hard is that to figure out is what you want to name your kid? And that's what we've kind of realized. And we do have a leader in the clubhouse and TBD on that. We're pretty sure we know what we're going to name him. No, it's not Noah. Ha ha. It's not a funny joke. I've heard it like 10 times. Shut the fuck up. His name's not going to be Noah. But that's been tough. And the power that you have as a parent, where it's like, dude, you could literally say to the doctor whatever you want, and they have to write it on the birth certificate. They have to. Like, if we walk in there and she gives birth and we're like, LeBron, they're going to have to write LeBron. Like, they're going to have to do it. That is the power of that, is truly a lot. So, yeah, I'm not sure really what else to say, other than at some point I'm going to have to backlog a bunch of episodes, or I've been kind of toying around with, like, do I do a separate show for, like, a limited run as, like, a, here's the first season, and then if I ever have to go on, like, some sort of extended, like, vacation or whatever, maybe do, like, a season 2 of that show. I just haven't really thought about what that could be. I'll give you an idea of one thing I was thinking is you create a show called Paternity Leave, and I just talk to a bunch of content creators who are dads, and, like, we just do, like, 5 or 6 episodes of that. I just didn't know how interesting that would be. But the reason that I wanted to do it is because there just isn't enough content for expecting fathers. Obviously, as a woman, first of all, you're just, like, conditioned your whole life to be like, well, you're going to be a mom someday. And that's just, like, part of, like, your education. Like, that's just, not that you know how to do it since, from, like, being a kid. But there is a lot of media out there naturally for pregnant women. But the flip side of it is, like, being an expecting dad, there's just not a ton of, like, there's a really good subreddit for it. But, like, other than that, there's just not a ton of great material out there. I'm sure if I, like, read a book, I'm sure that would help, right? But I just kind of wanted to create something independently that, like, felt raw and felt, real and felt authentic. And so that's something I was thinking of. Or the alternative is I just backlog some, like, super evergreen episodes of this show, and just kind of throw those out. And I don't know how long that's going to be. Obviously, we're going to have to kind of figure out, our bodies are going to have to figure out, like, what it's like to be, new parents. And in an ideal world, it's like maybe a week or 2. But, hey, there's a chance it's like a month, kind of like learning the ropes and, like, getting the hang of it. And I don't think it would be a month. I think, there's going to be a day here or there where it's not going to be that hard for me to do an hour of this show. But, yeah, that's what I got for you guys today. And that's your intro. Let's move on. So I'm a little bit annoyed because I planned on starting today's show with, like, a whole thing about Jayson Tatum. And I was going to go, like, hard in the motherfucking paint in the camp of Jayson Tatum. I was going to unsheath my sword and be like, everybody needs to leave him alone. Because I guess I didn't realize how much Jayson Tatum was my guy until I saw the world just collectively decide, like, one day, I guess, like, 2 weeks ago, that fuck this guy. And that people don't actually like Jayson Tatum. They don't want him to win MVP. And so I'm going into that Nuggets Celtics game last night. I'm rubbing my hands together. This is food, son. On, like, the biggest stage of the week. It's the MVP off, essentially, between Jayson Tatum and Nikola Jokic. And I'm going into it thinking, okay, well, Jaylen Brown is listed as questionable. Sneaky hope he doesn't play. Because all that means is that JT is going to go for 82. Well, Jaylen Brown decided that he did want to play, and then Jaylen Brown decided that he was going to eat up all the shots for good reason, because Jayson Tatum missed everything, and Jaylen Brown went for 41. Nuggets ended up winning, didn't they? Here's the problem. When you have a 9 p.m. tip-off Central Time, I can only make it to halftime. I'm just not, it's not like a for the love of the game anymore, I'm going to stay up. It's bullshit. I'm not doing that. Here's what pissed me off. Is if it wasn't Jamal Murray at the end of the first quarter hitting a nasty buzzer beater, then it was Nikola Jokic going into halftime hitting a nasty buzzer beater. What the hell is going on? Here's the thing that I have with Jamal Murray is I was so wrong about him that I've dug my heels in too far and too hard that I won't pivot. And every time he does something stupid, I'm like, see, he's not built for these moments. But then 9 times out of 10, and then I always focus on that one moment in the 9 times out of 10 that he's fucking awesome. Because if you had to, like, round up all the Kentucky guards of the last decade or so, Jamal Murray was the one that I was like, Even the championship, dude, I was still being a hater. The guy had a ring, and I was just like, I don't see it. I don't really know. Like, was awesome for all intents and purposes in the playoffs, and I just can't help but be like, somebody else would be better in this position. Nobody else would be better in the position that Jamal Murray is in. Nobody else is a better one guard to pair with Nikola Jokic. I mean, sure, if we really got into it, we'd probably think of a handful of them, like Luka, but Jamal Murray is perfect. Also, Aaron Gordon can go, like, 2 of 9 from the field. But those 2 makes are either going to be the filthiest oop that you've seen in like a month, or just like an insanely clutch, well-timed, 15-foot shot with like 2 minutes left in the game when they absolutely needed it most. So I honestly don't even have that much to say about Jayson Tatum from this game. He started the game knocking down his first 2 threes, and it was like, oh, here he goes. Off to the races. Nope. Didn't happen. But let's talk a little bit about the MVP race. Because here, let's talk about the narratives about, surrounding Jayson Tatum that I don't like. And I'm going to offer a little bit of pushback. Because when people talk about, all the MVP candidates, you look at like, the ones that I'm taking seriously are like Shea, Jokic, Luka, and Tatum. I think those, off the top of my head, I think those are the 4 that I'm like, it's probably going to be one of those, right? And you look at their team's records without them in the starting lineup. And people love to point out that the Celtics are 2-1 without Jayson Tatum. First of all, that's not that much. That's not that many games. But I think what's fun is when you look at all of the other guys, the Mavs are 1-2 without Luka. The Thunder are only 0-1 without Shea, and the Nuggets are 1-1 without Jokic this year. So here's the real takeaway. The Stars are playing these games. That's what we're learning this year, is that the dudes that we're actually wanting to see play games actually are. And, well, hey, they're not getting hurt, which is great to see. Shea is just like Mr. Durable. Mikal Bridges played 455 consecutive games, which I do have a little spiel on the Pistons Nets, and we'll get to that in just a second. But just to stay on this, my problem with the people who are like, if Jayson Tatum wasn't playing in a game and the Celtics were playing like 90% of the NBA, like 90% of the teams in the NBA pick one, right? And if Jayson Tatum wasn't playing, you would still probably bet on the Celtics to win. And what does that say? Well, they don't need their best player. I don't understand why we blame Jayson Tatum for Brad Stevens constructing a good roster, right? Like, fuck that guy for fielding a competitive team around your star. And fuck Danny Ainge for drafting a guy like Jaylen Brown in the first place, right? Like, why is that his problem? Why are we looking at a team like Dallas where, Luka can put up 5 straight 30-point triple-doubles? The only other guy to ever do that is Russell Westbrook. Oscar Robertson only had 4. I say only had 4. It's still a lot, but it's Russell Westbrook and Luka Doncic up at the top right now, right? Dallas still sucks. They still suck. And why is that? Because they don't have a good point of attack defender. I don't know. You look at guys like Derek Lively and you look at Daniel Gafford and, really solid guys in the paint. But Gafford also just doesn't play as much as you would have thought that he would have. Not that I'm expecting him to get like Tibbs minutes, play 38 minutes game. I just thought he was going to play more. Lively for a rookie, right? Like a really, really strong paint defender. It sounds really easy to say, but if only Dallas could give Luka a DPOY candidate as a teammate, I just think we would be having a completely different conversation. And I don't know who that would be, right? Who they can actually go and get. But as easy as it sounds, I think that would fix everything. Because we don't blame Luka. How do I want to phrase this? The Mavs roster is like weird. It's just weird. Also, Jason Kidd. I don't know what was weirder. I guess it was both. I think people just kind of lost sight of what he was talking about with putting KFC in Tim Hardaway Jr.'s locker. I think people just immediately First of all, I think people forget that, well, it's not like it's only white people that can be racist. Never mind. The weirdest part about that was that a major league reference in 2024 was probably the craziest thing about that. But I digress. The other thing that I don't like about the Jayson Tatum MVP argument is that it is honestly just as simple as this. The best player on the best team, I'm not saying they win, I'm saying they get a seat at the table. That's the conversation, is that people are mad at Jayson Tatum because we're talking about Jayson Tatum so much. So we want superstars in the NBA until they actually happen. And then as soon as they actually start to happen, the first thing that we have to do is talk about how they're actually super inefficient, which Jayson Tatum has shown that he is at times, especially if you take him in the fourth quarter. I think his fourth quarter splits are like... What am I going to do? Pretend to fucking remember them off the top of my head? They're fine. As for the entirety of the fourth quarter, like, they're fine. I think it's like 36, 41, and like 80 or something like that. It's like, whatever, that's fine. You look at the game that they played against Cleveland the other night on March 5th, and you go to the end of that game, this foul call gets reversed, and you're like, really? So the shot was the most optimal shot for Jayson Tatum in that moment against Darius Garland, by the way, a guy who is how many inches shorter than him? Is he like a foot shorter than him? Was a push-off, like falling away from the basket. That was the shot that Jayson Tatum was like, I can get this off. And then also kicking his legs out. Okay. I'm not saying I need this guy to win MVP. I'm saying all of the arguments surrounding it, I don't think are real. I think they've been horse shit. Like, find a new slant. Think of something that's actually real. I get the whole, like, well, he's a Celtic, so just through virtue, he's guilty by association of just being a Boston Celtic. I've been really consistent with this. I don't find him, or especially Jaylen Brown, to be like quintessentially Celtic. And I also, I guess, just don't hold the disdain towards the Celtics that a lot of people do. I think some people do just because it's sort of grandfathered in that you're supposed to hate Boston for good reason or whatever. I'm not here to argue that. And you would argue, well, me as a Pistons fan, like, shouldn't I hate Boston too? Why, though? Why? I wasn't alive for the Bad Boys. That's not my rivalry. Hell, I don't even hate the Bulls that much at all. Maybe partially it's because I live here, and so I have a little bit of a softer spot in my heart for them. But I don't have a problem with them at all because I didn't live through those rivalries. You know what I mean? As a Red Wings fan, like, I was technically alive for like the Avalanche rivalries in the early 2000s, the late 90s, but it doesn't count. Like, that's not my fight. I hate Pittsburgh. I still hate the Penguins to this day because of what they did to us in 2009. Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals is like replayed in my head almost every single day. I think about, was it Lidstrom or Cronwall that hit the top of he hit the crossbar like late in that third period. I remember I can hear it like to this day. So I say all this just to say, sure, if you want to hate him just because it's Boston and that's just what we as not even just NBA fans, but as sports fans are conditioned to do, is just to hate all of the Boston teams. More power to you. I'm not even going to argue that one because I do think that one's a little bit real. So that's what I think about all of that. You know, in order to get to this game, which again was a 9 p.m. tip-off, which is ridiculous, I get they did it just because hold on, Nick. Hold on. Stay with it. It was a 9 o'clock game, and I needed something. I needed an appetizer. I needed something to pass the time. I'm looking at the schedule, and I'm like, all right, Pistons, Nets, 6 o'clock. Like, I've very famously said that I've sworn off this team, and some of you have pointed out through virtue of emails and in the comments as well. You're like, you know, because I've said I'm not going to watch the Pistons until Monty Williams gets fired, and you're like, well, what if he doesn't get fired for like another year? Are you okay with not watching the team? Yeah, I am, because I'm just not going to do it. Name a more iconic duo. Because here's the thing with the Pistons. They either go up by 16 in the first quarter like they did against Brooklyn last night, and then by halftime they've smoked the lead. Or they're down by 16 in the first quarter, and by the end of the game we lose by 7, and we're like, well, we made it a close game, right? Well, we made it a competitive game. At least we were able to. We never lost that fight. It's always fucking something, and it's always one of those two. Again, it was the former last night. We're up by 16 against Brooklyn in the first quarter, and then Monty is like, all bench unit coming right up. I know you all want it. I know all you little piggies are starving for that all bench lineup. Fontecchio comes in. Kind of didn't do a ton last night. Cade is literally just in his 2017 to like 2021 Dylan Larkin era where it's just him. Like, it's just him. I'm just not the Ivy thing. I just don't care, man. I just don't care. I don't know how you can be so fast and so coordinated while also being as uncoordinated as he is. I don't know when Jalen Duren, who I do like, I want him here. He's part of the foundation. But I don't know when Jalen Duren decided that he's a turnstile on defense. What the fuck? When was that? You know, who was in that meeting where he was like, yeah, I could do that for the team. I could drop some slack if that's what you want. The fuck? I think he mentioned the other day, you know, that injuries didn't help and that made it harder for him to play defense. You know what, man? I'll give that to you. You're still 20 years old. I'm not really in a rush to figure this thing out. It's clearly going to take some time. So sure. You know, what are we getting from Stu? Oh my God. we got to cover this. Here at the Coping Hour, being one of YouTube's or NBA YouTube's most crucial intellectual minds, we cover the biggest stories from all angles on this show, okay? And I otherwise would not keep fucking talking about this because it doesn't matter. But we keep hearing more information about Isaiah Stewart punching Drew Eubanks in the face. If you remember, when this originally came out, the quote was that Drew Eubanks didn't flinch, that he was unfazed by the punch. And what we said on this show was, why are we only hearing this from Phoenix's perspective? Because clearly they would only say something like that if it was a bunch of like Suns personnel around the incident. If it was a bunch of like Phoenix, like not ball arena, like the stick talk footprint arena, whatever the fuck it is in Phoenix, security in the area, in immediate vicinity, didn't even flinch. Explain to me why now we're hearing that he had like his teeth all fucked up and like had to get dental work and was bleeding from the mouth. So which one was it? Did he not flinch, or was he bleeding from the mouth and then proceeded to play 18 minutes and like you wouldn't have even known that anything happened? It can't be both, because it can't be both. Brutal. Like, oh my God. Please, can we just hear like what actually happened and stop hearing these fucking spins on it? I honestly don't even care at this point. But anyways, Isaiah Stewart is like a basketball player. Don't go anywhere, but if I had to do a chopping block this summer, if Detroit decides that they want to go after a guy, you know, Isaiah Stewart's number one because of his extension. The money that he's going to be making, it just makes it way easier to throw him in with, you know, to match some salaries. Also because he is a legit NBA player. So he would be first on the chopping block just because of the extension, through no fault of his own, just is what it is. Sorry that you earned a second contract and kind of got paid, but you're out of here. So he would be first, but don't want that to happen. I think Ivy is second. And when he gets traded, I'm so excited for the story to come out about why Detroit drafted him and why they ended up keeping him. They didn't want him. It's not my story to tell. You guys will hear it one day, preferably when he gets traded. Asar Thompson, if he goes anywhere, that'll be the day. Oh man, that'll be the day. But I just think, again, if you're trying to go after a dude, I'm really trying to rack my brain for who that could even be. Like if Detroit really wanted to do the Karl Anthony Towns thing, you know, and they wanted to go after not a disgruntled star, but a guy who maybe just kind of needs to be somewhere else. Although I would argue that Karl Anthony Towns, when you put him with Anthony Edwards and when you put him with Rudy Gobert, which unfortunately, rest in peace to Karl Anthony Towns' meniscus, or was it his meniscus, I think, going to be out, reevaluated in like 4 weeks. Here's the thing is Minnesota's definitely going to drop in the standings. I only brought up Asar to say if you trade for a guy like Karl Anthony Towns, you're going to have to throw in a lot of interesting shit. Unfortunately, Asar Thompson would be one of those things, but I don't think he's going anywhere. So anyways, Minnesota's definitely going to drop in the standings with this cat injury, and Anthony Edwards, I hope, just kind of goes like berserk for a while. I think he played like 44 last night. That's good to see. Rudy Gobert had like his classic, like basically 15 and 15. He probably had a handful of blocks, maybe a couple steals too. Cool. Love it. Naz Reid, a guy that's a Motown All-Star that I have not been as right about a guy in a long time as I was about Naz Reid. So that feels good. Not a Victory Lap podcast, by the way. But when you getting reevaluated in 4 weeks, I mean, the playoffs will have probably just started, or maybe will be about to start. I don't know when it actually is on the calendar. I think this is very survivable for them as long as he's able to come back, you know, at the pretty much within that time, at the end of that time frame. So I think that's everything I got. Trying to think. Here's a quick little thing. Pistons end up winning that game against the Nets. Cool. Love it. Still don't know why James Wiseman is like playing. Like, I made a joke last night where I was like, his basketball IQ is like if Helen Keller, and then I stopped myself and I was like, well, she couldn't see and she couldn't hear. So I was like, what's greater than that? James Wiseman, I guess. Because Wiseman's like camped in the low post and he's like looking for somebody to pass to. Fontecchio in the left corner makes a really strong cut to the basket along the baseline. got both of his hands in the air waving for the ball. Wiseman passes it back out above the break. Okay. I didn't want to score points on that possession either, asshole. And then that game wraps up, and I flip over to Miami and Dallas. And I think I'm ready to say this. Not that maybe most of you won't agree with this, but just because I don't think I've said this into a microphone, so just for posterity. Until Steph retires, he will be he's on a heater right now. You have to drop everything and see what he's doing, right? Like, it's just must see when he goes on those runs, right? I think Luka is just right there, man, because he puts up this 3 in the right corner with like 5 and change left that had no business going in. There was no rhyme or reason that he even put up the shot. I think it was actually late in the clock, and that's why he put it up. It just inexplicably goes in. And when you watch him do ridiculous shit, I was just thinking the other day about the Game 7 that they played against Phoenix a couple of years ago. I just hadn't thought about that game in a while. And I kind of want to go back and watch some of the highlights from it because I'm sure it's just Luka being fucking disrespectful for like 15 minutes in the name of the compilation, at least. Yeah, there's your guys' NBA dosage for the weekend. Let's move on. So we're going to do something kind of unique in this episode, and we're kind of just going to do some rapid-fire emails because truly like a generational batch of emails came in this week, and I know that if I say, I'll get to this one on Monday, I'll just like push it. I know that once I release this episode over the weekend, we're going to get a whole new batch of emails, and I'm going to be like, ooh, this one, and it's just going to get on the back burner, pushed to the back burner, and I'm just never going to actually read them. So I want to get to as many of these as I can. Some of them I honestly don't even have that much to say about, and we're just going to kind of read them, and we're just going to move on. We're going to do something that we've never done before. We're going to read an email it's a response to an email that we read last week about the Cleveland Browns. And in the TLDR of that email was the guy was, first of all, he was on a heater, and he was like just being like, fuck Deshaun Watson, I can't believe this is my life, like crying through it all. And I thought he was right about everything. And then at the end of it, he said, also obligatory NBA take, I think, again, Cleveland sports fan, he was like, the Cavs are going to get bounced in the first round again. And I liked that take because I was like, this guy is just being honest. He's being very vulnerable, and he's kind of going through it right now. I really liked it. So Dylan, welcome to the show, responded to it in a way that I thought it was interesting because it gives you sort of two sides of the same coin through the lens of a Cleveland sports fan that I think a lot of us otherwise wouldn't have the perspective on. And I thought it was really detailed and really nuanced. So let's read it, and then we'll move on. Subject line, response to one of your emailers. Hey, Nick. So I was completely on board with the email about the Browns the other day until he threw his stupid basketball take in at the end. This has become a common theme for Cleveland sports fans. They're just Browns fans until the Cavs are good again, and then they hop on the Cavs bandwagon and bring all the negativity from that shitty franchise over to ours. We've rebuilt our team after losing arguably the greatest player of all time in only a matter of a few years. We have plenty of young talent and look like we could be improving each year for seasons to come. But then Browns fans come in and act like the sky is falling when we go through a bad stretch of games. They talk shit on all of our players after a bad game or a bad week and drive all these players out of town. For example, these Cleveland sports shows, Browns talk shows mostly, go on air talking about how Mitchell's leaving, how we should trade Mobley and Garland because our team stepped up when they went down. Yeah, that we kind of just talked about that with Tatum, whatever. Back to the email. How about you fuck off and let your young players develop and realize that this is a much more competent front office than the Browns? To summarize, yes, our team has holes that need to be filled, but we are also very good, and our best players are young. We are fine. The world is not coming to an end because we lost one playoff series with an inexperienced roster. We have a longer window than a lot of teams in the NBA, and we're in a hell of a lot of a better situation than probably like 80% of the league. Just enjoy your sports team and being good every year. And hey, who knows? Maybe one year we'll reach the ultimate goal. I think you nailed this. The Mobley rhetoric I don't think it's gotten out of control. But then again, that's somebody who, isn't, consuming Cleveland sports media really at all. Like really at all. There was what's the Fear the Sword? What's that? It's Justin something. And then who's the other guy? That Cavs pod that everybody, do they still do that? I don't, maybe you guys don't even, I don't know. But the Mobley rhetoric has basically been, people thought he was going to be further along offensively in this is number 3 for him, than he actually is. And so you're just kind of like, oh, like what's going on here? With Darius Garland, I mean, hey, another guy that I was just like, he's too small. He's not good. Where did he go? Vanderbilt or something? I was like, yeah, hell no. Wrong. I remember being devastated when they drafted him, and I was like, you literally have Colin Sexton. Like, what's the problem? Why do you think you need Darius Garland? And then Darius Garland decided that he was a better basketball player, and I was like, oh, all right. Colin Sexton goes to Utah, and I was like, that's fine. He's just going to be like a points merchant in the regular season because his ass is never going to the playoffs in Utah. Turns out, I don't know, they've actually fielded a competitive roster over there. Walker Kessler, like second in the league in blocks, like just a wall on defense. They had Fontecchio, thanks for him. Lauri Markkanen, don't need to explain that. That guy made an all-star team, which nobody would have predicted ever. The fact that Lauri Markkanen was able to break out of purgatory in Chicago, surely Lauri Markkanen was there with like Jim Boylan, right? It had to have been that era, and then he ended up in Cleveland, and then he ended up in Utah, right? The fact that we ended up doing a 180 on Lauri Markkanen and deciding that he was actually really good because all he showed us was that he was really good was fascinating. This is supposed to be about Cleveland. Yeah, I don't even have that much to say. I just thought it was really, really interesting. So let's move on to a different email. It's actually about Fontecchio. I have a lot on him, kind of. It's not really about him, but we'll get there. From Paolo. Paolo, welcome to the show. Subject line, the Simone Fontecchio trade. Hi, Nick. It's Paolo, your favorite your fan from Brazil. I was just thinking about the Pistons, and I kept getting to a point where I realized the first player that Troy found was Fontecchio. He's truly a good 3-and-D player, one that we haven't had in a long time. Sure, we can talk about Ivy, Duran, Stu, or even Bay as player that Troy saw something in that others did not, but they were still first-round picks. Of course they had talent. By the way, I'm not counting Cade. You do not get credit for that. We'll get to that in a second, but I agree with you. I don't know. Something about Fontecchio makes me happy. The ability to find real NBA players for low cost is really fun. Really wish he was starting, but I guess Monty knows something that I don't. No, he doesn't. Troy has to find more Fontecchios out there, as we do not have a bunch of tradable assets. Parenthetically, I am not counting the core four. And just to finish, Stu has become a legit good NBA player, and I'm not sure we will give him the credit he deserves until he is out of here. Could not agree more. Could not agree more with that last point, that until Isaiah Stewart is gone in like the aforementioned trade, hypothetical that we were talking about earlier, where it's like he's first on the chopping block again just because of how much money he makes and how much money he'll make over the next like 2 or 3 years. Like, it's just going to be so easy to throw him in there. And then as soon as he's gone, people are going to be like, if only we had like a mobile four who could stretch the floor. Like, if only we had one of those. Yeah, motherfucker. Like, that would be really nice. Is Fontecchio the first, like, good low-value player that Troy Weaver has found? Like, quote-unquote found? If I really try to rack my brain here, I saw somebody try to give Troy credit for Christian Wood the other day, and they were definitely forgetting that literally one of the first things that Troy Weaver did was not pay Christian Wood, and he went to Houston. That was not him. That was Ed Stefanski. And Ed Stefanski almost fucked that up because he was in a preseason battle with Joe Johnson, and everybody was on their hands and knees being like, please do not keep Joe Johnson. Please take this Christian Wood kid. Up to that point, Christian Wood had played for the Bucks, the Sixers, the Pels. I think there was one more team. He played for like 4 or 5 teams, including in the G League. Didn't he win like MVP down there or something? But he was in the G League too, so he was everywhere, and he just couldn't find a home. But everywhere that he was, teams just wanted him to play. I know that was the case with Milwaukee. I know that was the case with New Orleans. I don't remember really what he was doing in Philadelphia, if he even really got any burn out there. But Pistons fans were all about the experience, and we ended up being right about that. Is it a good thing that Troy Weaver decided not to pay him? I don't know. I mean, because we didn't pay him, if you really want to do it this way, because we didn't draft Tyrese Halliburton and we did Killian Hayes, all those moves led to us winning the lottery and getting Cade, which most of us wouldn't trade for the world, right? Because that's our guy. But the biggest thing about Fontecchio is for a team that literally can't shoot threes. It's not hyperbole. It's not like, look at a box score any given night. It's 2 for 6, 1 for 5, 0 for 4, 0 for 7, 2 for 9, and then you have Fontecchio who's like 5 for 8. Like, that's it. That's every single game. And that's why I think we're all so hell-bent on, like, please pay this guy. It's not about him being a star. It's not that we think he's going to develop into this world eater who's giving you 30 points a game. It's because we finally found somebody who actually fits what we're trying to do, And it just feels very antithetical to decide not to pay that guy, especially when everything that you're doing as an organization is positioning yourself for this summer. When you keep pointing to this imaginary like cap number, the most overrated asset in basketball is cap space. When you keep trying to convince the fans that like all you have to do is let us get to this summer, and Troy keeps extending his time frame, which by the way, he will be the GM moving forward. If they really wanted to fire Troy, 27 games in a row would have done the trick. A real thing that happened this season. Do people remember that? Probably not anymore, because as of this recording, the Pistons have more wins than the Wizards. Whoa. That's interesting. The Pistons got to double-digit wins faster than the Wizards did, despite losing 27 games in a row earlier this season. At this point, it's like, don't be that team who still has single-digit wins, honestly. Pay Fontecchio. Keep this man. I'm begging you to. Even on the nights where he doesn't do that much, he always makes... Just watch him. Just like watch what he does off the ball. We're talking about... Because that's the biggest thing, too. I talk about how Wiseman just like missed him on this wide open baseline cut because he just like can't see, I guess. The problem with Detroit and the guys that they keep drafting, they're good, but they're only good when they have the ball in their hands. And the fact that Detroit went and got somebody that not only can shoot threes, but actually does shit off the ball, please keep him. And congratulations, Troy, because it was an awesome trade. Let's move on. Let's do a quick one here, and we'll move on. Subject line, Coping Hour Broadcasting from Merrick. Merrick, welcome to the show. Hello, Nick. I know you're a huge broadcast guy, and I love listening to you talk about this kind of stuff. I am Australian. And then parenthetically, surprise, surprise, right? The amount of you fuckers who email into the show, and as we've talked about ad nauseum, listen to the show. Shout out to, what's the most obscure Australian city I can name? Perth? That's Australia, right? It's not New Zealand. If it is, I'm just going to go. Here's what I learned is it's not Melbourne. That's not how you're supposed to say it. I think maybe as an American, you can get away with saying that just because our mouths are built differently and the way that we enunciate is obviously different. But it's like Melbourne. Melbourne. You're supposed to basically say it with an Australian accent. I digress. Back to the email. I'm Australian, surprise, surprise, and I'm very conflicted about commentators because in Australia rules football, the commentary is either artistry or generationally awful. I somewhat feel the same for the NBA, where it is either some great Mike Breen bang or some old NBA players just having a conversation while the game is on. But I mainly watch the games on mute and then sent a follow-up email. Also, I forgot my point in the end. What do you consider to be a good broadcaster? Dog, when we turned on... Thank you for the email. When we turned on the Nuggets-Celtics game last night, and we see Stan Van Gundy is on the call, I say to my girlfriend, I was like, be prepared at any point in the game for Stan Van Gundy to just go on like a 90-second rant that has nothing to do with what's happening in front of him. The difference is it's something about both he and his brother, who, and obviously Jeff hasn't been calling games this year, but when Jeff and Stan call games and they go on those tangents, for some reason it just feels like endearing, and it feels like there's some charm to it, because at least it's like rooted in something that is real, right? Where like if you listen to, and I like Tony Romo, but if Tony Romo does it in the NFL, you're like, shut the fuck up. Right? Like, please shut up. And even Jim Nantz, oh my God, he always gets so annoyed about it. Has anybody asked Jim Nantz how he feels about Tony Romo fucking up his Super Bowl call when the Chiefs won the Super Bowl? Dude, I've lost sleep over that because it drives me fucking insane that Romo, like, killed that moment. The Chiefs go back to back. Nantz, it feels like, is just about to have this electric, historic call. And Romo just forgot the moment. Like, it felt like he kind of just got lost in the mechanics of the role. And honestly, this kind of answers your question. What do I think, classifies somebody as a good broadcaster? Well, obviously there are levels to it. If you're talking about the play-by-play commentator, you have to have, if you're doing baseball, right? If there's a grounder to second, you can't just say, Anna is a grounder to second, throw over to first. You can't say that every single time. You have to like reinvent how to say it. Oh, we got a chopper to second. We got I don't, you know what I mean. I have baseball terms. I picked a bad sport because I don't fucking know. But you know what I mean? If you watch a baseball game, the same play will happen 16 times, but they articulate it differently every single time. You have to have different quips. You have to have different things that you say while also having, to your point, the signature phrase. For Mike Breen, it's bang, right? Can't think of literally anybody else off the top of my head just because that's how these go when the ball starts rolling. My brain just goes, it's all foggy. But you have to have that. Additionally, and I think this is the biggest part for play-by-play guys, you have to know when to let the moment breathe. When I'm watching the Lions playing the Rams in the playoffs, the best thing about Mike Tirico calling that game was, first of all, him being a Michigan native. So he understood the stakes. He understood the gravity of those moments and what it meant to the city of Detroit to not just be in the playoffs, but to be hosting a playoff game. He knew when to turn it off and to let the crowd, to let the atmosphere, and to let the moment do the talking. You know what I mean? I think that's huge. When it comes to the color commentators, obviously you have to have an understanding of the game that, as smart as you and I think we may be about the sports that we're watching, you want to almost learn something every single time you turn on a game, right? You want to be like, it's a really good point. I haven't thought of it that way. Or they'll talk about like certain nuances of, assuming it's a former player, in most instances it is, or maybe it's a former coach, it's a former executive. It's somebody of that ilk who has been around their respective game that they're calling they've put in their 10,000 hours, right? You have to add some flair to it, right? Because ultimately you have more like inside baseball knowledge of that sport than like 99% of the people who are watching that game. So that falls to you to be able to articulate these moments to, if there's a little dust up that happens, like it's fun to be like, hey, Tony, like what are some things that are said at the bottom of these piles? Or, when dudes are like bigging their chest and trying to get in fights and like being held back, like what is that moment like? And being able to, explain those situations to us. So that's sort of my short list. To me, it matters way more what the play-by-play guy does, because ultimately the burden of the broadcast falls on their shoulders in a lot of ways. If you want to talk about like who to me is the best color commentator in sports across the board, I think it's Herb Street. And some of you are going to hate that, but I just think there's a level of passion there that I've never seen. In my lifetime, there's never been a color commentator who cares as deeply about the product the way that he does. And it really comes across when he does NFL games. Oh my God, he doesn't want to be there. Him and Al Michaels do not want to be there. I can't imagine how much money they must have gotten paid to do those games, because they usually get stuck with the worst game of the week. These teams are on these short turnarounds. The Thursday night games, like just historically, are a little bit worse. There are more penalties. There's less points, and everybody's tired. Dudes are getting hurt. It's always just a tough game to call, and you can always tell because Herb Street will always just talk about, if Saquon Barkley is in the game and he runs he breaks out like a 15-yard run. Herb Street's first thought is going to be to talk about how Saquon Barkley used to always do that at Penn State. He's always going to talk about what that guy did in college because that's what he cares about more. And you always know in the back of his head, he's like, please, let's just get to Saturday. Please just get me to the game day set and then get me on a plane to, wherever it is that we're going after that. So that's what I got for you there. Thank you for the email. That was a good one. Another one, I don't even know if this is worth reading. Grandma, this one's a little crass. But I thought it was so funny because he's right. From Michael, subject line, Lavar Balls Nuts. Michael, welcome to the show. Nick, you mentioned LeVar Ball in a recent episode, and it unlocked a deep-seated memory. Do you remember when LeVar pulled his AAU team off the court because of the refs? If so, do you remember his subsequent IG post? He was talking about it on his couch, and his bulge was fucking insane. Like, you could see the curvature of his sack and everything. Easily the most based LeVar moment for me. But a very close number 2 was when he said that the only thing he wants Jason Whitlock's opinion on is snacks. That was fucking hilarious, and fuck that guy. I feel like the only person who misses LeVar being in the media. Also has me thinking, was Lamar as detrimental to the career of his sons as we thought back then? I'm conflicted personally. All I know is he was flexing hard with his big-ass fucking nuts. And then And then he threw in a basketball take here at the end. Get DeAndre Ayton the fuck off the Blazers. This season has been disappointing, but that one Shaedon Sharpe dunk made my whole year. DeAndre Ayton makes a lot of money. I remember so vaguely what you're talking about. What's funny is I do kind of remember... How do I articulate? I remember his penis more than... more than I remember the team... No, I remember them both kind of equally as vaguely as it happened. So it's kind of there. I do 100% remember the Jason Whitlock thing because people were sneaky like pissed about that. It was kind of like split right down the middle because if nothing else, you got to give Lavar credit for being as early to the fuck Jason Whitlock thing as he was because people weren't there yet, especially not for the reasons that they don't like him in 2024. Right. But he was kind of boots on the ground before everybody else on that. He was on the first wave at Omaha Beach. You know what I mean? On the whole fuck Jason Whitlock thing. But we can look back on it now and just say objectively that was hilarious. Was Lavar as detrimental to his kids and their careers as you know, people were getting? Well, two of them are in the NBA. And one of them was an all-star last year. Well, I believe made an all-star team. If not, he plays at that level pretty consistently, even if he's on a team that sucks and even if his coaches and, you know, upper management are like, damn, nobody on this team wants to win. Like everybody's just content with sucking. And that's not directly about LaMelo, but the fish rots from the head and he's kind of their dude, right? So you got to figure just through sort of, again, I keep saying like through virtue of that or guilty by association. I've said that a lot in this episode, but that is kind of what it is, right? LiAngelo, I mean, they all got scholarships to UCLA, you know, just because LiAngelo fucked that up doesn't mean it didn't happen. And even though, you know, LaMelo he never ended up setting foot on campus and they went to Lithuania, like that did still happen. You know, Lonzo went through with it, only played 1 year, but like it still happened. You know, he went second in the draft, went to the Lakers. LaVar manifested that shit. And I don't think it would have worked out in Los Angeles regardless of LaVar, honestly. The injuries that Lonzo is dealing with right now, it's not LaVar's fault. Probably was going to happen regardless. You know what I mean? Maybe it would have helped if he was playing, and I don't know, but maybe it would have helped if he was playing in like actual sneakers for the first few years of his career and not like pretend shoes. I don't even, like, we talked about them the other day. I don't even know what we would call those. So no, I think that was all just, first of all, it was a little coded, but second of all, no, I think it was just people being over dramatic because they didn't like how loud he was and they didn't like how always available he seemed to be whenever a camera was around. I think people were very turned off by that because every time he was on camera, he was like, I would beat the shit out of Michael Jordan. And it's like, okay, but what do you want him to say? Right? Nothing in an ideal world. But hey, man, that was his brand. That's what he did. He was really good at it. Didn't he do some shit with like the WWE? Perfect for him. Literally perfect for him. That's what that dude is built for. Like he's an engagement farmer. Yeah. Let's move on. You know, on today's edition of Friday Feels, I guess for vanity reasons, they're actually going to kind of be about me. But I figure in an episode where I give you guys this, you know, this big announcement where this major life event is going to be happening with us. You know, we're going to be having a kid here in like a month and a half, you know, 2 months. Part of it is because one of these emails like has fucked with me in a way that they only worded it well and it was only nice, and of course they didn't do anything wrong. They just were right, and it bothered me. So we're gonna read 2 emails back to back because they're kind of the same in a way, and you'll see where we're going with this. So the first one, no subject line, rookie mistake, but I still open the emails anyways, so whatever. This one comes to us from Dylan. I think that's the second Dylan in this episode. Dylan, welcome to the show. Hey, Nick, long-time listener, first-time emailer for the show. Wow, 1 for 1, shooting at a high clip. I know you wanted to move away from Friday Feels, but I just wanted to pick your brain for a second. One thing I have learned from watching your show is that I feel like you know yourself really well as a person. To me, it appears that you know things about yourself, like how certain things make you feel and what your strengths and weaknesses are, and how you can joke and accept who you are. Like when that one person signed you up for a Scientology subscription, you made a joke that you knew that you would fall for something like that and get deep in that world. That is just one example, but when I watch your show every week, I get to know you more and more and more, and I think I'm drawn to your show so much because of how authentic you are, and because I think you're hilarious. Thank you very much. For myself, I have struggled to find my place in this world and knowing what I want to do and who I am as a person. do you know how you got to where you are in knowing who you are as a person? And maybe if you have some advice on how one can truly learn who they are. Maybe I'm wrong and you don't think you know yourself well, but it seems to me that you do, and I'm just curious on your journey on how you got there. Peace and blessings to you, and love the show. Love, Dylan. Dylan, thank you for the email. I guess I will just respond to this one really quickly, and then I'll read the other one, and then we'll kind of lump them together. I appreciate you identifying that. Again, for vanity reasons, I do kind of pat myself on the back from time to time because I do think I know myself pretty well. And that's a big thing where a couple episodes ago I had said, I think it was maybe in the 30th episode, where I was like, the biggest thing to me about this show is I can go back 4 months when the show started and watch the first episode and watch the most recent episode. And even though it'll look different and the cadence will be a little bit different and there will be things that are different about the show, ultimately at my core, I'm still the same guy talking into a microphone. Where in previous stints that I've had on this channel where I'll like upload for a few months and then I'll just go 0 dark 30, in the first month that I started uploading and then 4 months later, it's just a different guy, whether subconsciously or consciously. I'm trying to like emulate somebody else's content and trying to be somebody that just wasn't me. And I think what really helped me was being, humbled and having like a proverbial like ego death like 2 years ago. And when the world is like, hey, you're fucking sick and here's a bunch of money and like here's a bunch of attention, and then that same world kind of pulls the rug out immediately and decides like you don't get any of that anymore and like you can fuck off. It really, I kind of needed that in a way as like how old would I have been at that? 22, 23. Like all I had really been shown since I was 19 was that if I act ridiculous on camera or, into a microphone, that will give me the validation from people that I need. And I think as soon as that was taken away from me, I was able to realize like what is actually, not to sound corny, but I was able to prioritize shit that actually mattered and realize what was actually real and what wasn't. And what came with that was like, and I still do this all the time, is you just kind of have to have these like really intimate conversations with yourself, whether it's when you're laying in bed at night, maybe in the morning. Usually at night is when I find it to be the most healthy because you kind of get lost in your own thoughts as long as it's in a constructive and positive way. Sometimes I'll just kind of be sitting here throughout the day and, I'll be taking care of something and then I'll literally just like sit down for 15 minutes and just kind of like reflect, and I'll just kind of think about some things, whatever the flavor of the week is that's kind of bothering me or that's on my mind. I talk all the time about behavioral patterns, and identifying those within other people, and then realizing that and being like, wow, I hate that behavior. And then I realize I'm actually just projecting, and I realize it's something that I actually do myself. And then I always try to trace that back. I'm like, why is it that I do this thing? Like, what happened to me as a kid? You know what I mean? What happened to me when I was 15 years old? What happened to me when I was 9 years old? The older you get, the harder it is to trace things back. I've learned. I for some reason didn't think that would happen. I thought you would just remember everything, all of your experiences for the rest of your life. But, all the time you just kind of remember something. You're like, wow, that was pretty deeply repressed, or, whatever it is. But I think that's a big thing for me, is identifying certain behaviors that I have, like to the example that you used is like, why do I feel like I would be so susceptible to falling for a cult, like something like Scientology? The reason is because of how validated they make you feel, the tactics that they use to get you in, and to sink their teeth into you. Like, I know what they do, and I know that's all a bunch of shit that means a lot to me, is I need that external validation, and I need to feel like I matter, and I need to feel like my presence and my existence is being valued in a way that isn't like greater than others, but like sneaky sometimes. Yeah. Right. And that's what I'm talking about, where like a few years ago, it was definitely that, where I needed to be the most important person in the room. And I needed to be the person in the room who was like, everybody wanted me to be there. You know what I mean? Now it's like, I don't want to be there at all. And I think that goes perfectly into this next email that we got. Give me just a second here to pull it up. This one comes into us from Nico. Nico, welcome to the show. Subject line, fear of fame. Hey, Nick, my name is Nico, which I hope is close enough that you read this. Oh, close enough to my name. I read all of the emails. I'm a longtime listener, and I admire you as a person and as a personality as much as anyone on the internet. When I was listening to you on today's show, it really struck me that you seem to be actively positioning yourself in a lane of obscurity rather than trying to get back to the limelight. I've seen what you're capable of creatively, and I know that you could be pulling in 10 times the views and growth that the Coping Hour does if you really wanted to. While I love the Coping Hour, as you said, it's not the stuff that grew your channel, and it's not the stuff that would make it pop off from here. I can't help but think that you must be avoiding notoriety because of ... You know. I feel the same way. While I never had social media fame, I was a student body president of my high school. My school was very poorly run, and I had to be the face of it. I went from being a pretty well-liked kid to being the boogeyman of the entire school because of how we had to adjust to things during COVID. It honestly freaked me out. I never felt so much social anger towards me, and it still affects me to this day. Since then, I've always felt that I don't want to deal with fame or notoriety of any sort. I don't look to pursue student government at my college, and I find myself avoiding situations where I might get some sort of spotlight on me. It's not nice needing to worry about so many eyeballs staring at me every single day. Oh, it's nice not needing to worry about that, right? But it also feels like shit when I don't capitalize on opportunities sitting in front of my face. I guess I don't really have a question to go with all of this. I just want to say that I understand how you feel. You're a genius and one of the best creators on the internet. You would kill in any medium as long as you're in front of a microphone. I hope you can find a way to be as creative and as prolific as you can be. P.S. Being a casual fan is at PS Sports Take. Being a casual fan is more fun than being a hardcore fan. We don't have time to unpack that one. The long and short of it is I completely agree with you, and it's not even close. Thank you, Nico, for the email. Yeah, man, to your point, like, you lose out on certain opportunities because you dig your heels in to these principles, and you're like, this is just who I am now. And even when you could, make your life better, and you almost inadvertently don't do that just because you're afraid of what the consequences of that would be. And in the instance that you're talking about, it's like the consequence is just more people are paying attention to who you are as a dude. And I don't know if it's the same case with you, but for me, I know that it's just rooted in a ton of insecurity. And I'm pretty open about that on the show, about like just how bad that is for me. And like, there's a reason that I talk about validation all the time. And I'm very, very thankful that you guys play nice and that you guys, you feed into that a little bit, but in a way that isn't unhealthy, in a way that isn't like, putting me on a platform. Cause for me, that's what it is in a lot of ways. First of all, you're right that I would rather this show sort of exist in obscurity, not because I don't want it to be a good show and not because I don't want it to do well, but because in some ways I think I would just rather matter a lot to a lower number of people rather than matter a little to a lot, if I can phrase it that way and have it make sense. I get really frustrated and when I make a breakout video or just like a standalone thing and like it performs well, because as soon as the video leaves my bubble, it invites so much attention and rhetoric that I don't like. And once you go beyond your bubble and people they're not able to contextualize like who you are as a dude. And, if I want to make a joke about like, when Aaron Gordon used a drone to drop a basketball and like help him in the dunk contest, if I make a joke about like, he should have gotten a Ukrainian, like you guys are going to do a nasal exhale and be like, nice. But as soon as it leaves my bubble, I just can't handle it, man. I just can't handle it. That's insecurity. That's where that comes from, right? The other part of this, I was just talking to my girlfriend about this the other day because I let her know. She's like, what's wrong? And I was like, this guy sent me this fucking email and it's really fucked with me. Because you're right. I think what it is, in some ways, is I think I would rather tell myself that I could, if I really wanted to, turn this show up, take it to like 11 and make it like fucking number 1. If I really wanted to, I could, right? That's what I like to tell myself. And I think it's easier to say that rather than actually try and realize that I can't. And realize that I don't actually have the juice anymore. Because again, like, just for example, if I really wanted to, this would be on Apple. This would be on Amazon. This would be wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. Like, it would be everywhere. It's not. I would TikTokify the shit out of myself. I would utilize shorts. I would utilize IG Reels. I would get back on Twitter, You know, I would actually use the Motown Noah Discord, which is like a whole different thing, right? Is once you achieve like this goal of people knowing who you are, which is what I always wanted. That's like all I ever cared about. When I was growing up, it was like all I cared about was performers. All I cared about was comedians. All I cared about was like the person who was on stage holding a microphone. Everybody was paying attention to them and what they had to say. That's all I ever wanted. And then once I got even a fraction of that, once I got even like 2% of that, what comes with it is something that I'm just not equipped for, and something that I am just not emotionally. I try to break down the barrier of creator and viewer all the time. That's part of why this show exists. That's part of why these emails exist, is because it's just as much your show as it is mine, right? Even if like Tom, the Wizards fan who emails all the time and he's with his girlfriend, like in my head, that dude is a part of the show. Like that dude's lore is just like, it's laced within the show. You know what I mean? So even if you're not making an appearance every week, so to speak, like you're here. Like this is for you guys too. I'm like the host is really all that it is. But what comes with that creator and viewer relationship are like parasocial relationships. That's when I have to check out. Because I totally agree with you that with some of you guys when you say like, I feel like I know you. I hope you feel that way. But I don't hope you feel that way like totally. Because you don't, right? Because there's a ton that I don't talk about on here all the time. For example, the fact that we've been expecting parents for like 8 months, right? Like there are levels to this, and I hope you would feel comfortable enough to come up to me and say hi, which most of you fucking don't. Most of you just like to send in emails and are like, hey, I saw you at this thing, that was cool. Fucking come say hi. Please stop being so weird. Please stop checking the weather app. Come say hi. I'm really nice, I promise. I'm gonna shake your hand. We're gonna have a really nice interaction. But I have had too many bad experiences with these parasocial relationships in a way that has just completely turned me off to, and that's what sucks is I love having these communities within the content because I think that's what helps build the brand, you know, and because I'm just so fascinated by like, why do you watch this shit, right? And I love finding that out, and I love figuring out who you guys are as people. So that way I just know a little bit more about what my audience is, and I can kind of tailor the content to that, right? That's why I love the online communities. But when it devolves into something that just makes me uncomfortable, that's another reason why I just don't want to. It's hard for me. The biggest reason is, you know, sort of what you alluded to is like, see, here's the good news now is like, you know, now that like my Twitter is gone, I can never really get this you'd again. Like I can't, even if it was shit that I said when I was 15, 14, like whatever, I don't care. At this point, it was, you know, however many years ago, like that can't happen anymore. And like that part of it is nice. Even if it did, like I wish somebody would try. I fucking wish somebody would try, because it just wouldn't affect me the same way anymore. Because I would just be like, you're not being for real. Like what you're doing isn't something that you actually, like you're not doing this in the name of like social justice. You're doing this in the name of like, it's like gotcha journalism, but like through virtue of the internet. You know what I mean? So yeah, that part's tough. And as much as I, you know, always like to say that the end goal of this show is to sell it to somebody and to like, you know, get like real sponsors and shit. I mean that kind of. I sound like I'm about to cry. I don't know what that was in my voice. I mean that kind of, but I also, whether it was working for Wave Sports and Entertainment or whether it was doing the Bunny Cardigan show, both of those things ended because of things that were technically out of my control. Both of those relationships got fucked up because I stopped being in business with myself. And that's another reason why I started this show, was because I was like, if something goes wrong, it's literally my fault. And I don't want to sell this to anybody without it still just being me. Like, I wanted to do that because I want to make money. Like, that's it. That's literally it. It's the only reason I would want to do it. I don't need resources. I don't need access to people. I don't really want to interview people anymore, unless it was like Cade again. And he was like, hey, we're best friends. Remember that? Yes, Cade. I'm so happy you remember that. I thought you'd forget about me. He's like, no, dude, of course I remember you. I'd love to do that. I'd love for that conversation to happen. I appreciate these emails, though. There's actually another one, I guess, just since we're on the subject. I don't really have anything to say to this, and there's not really even a question in here. This one was from Andrew. Andrew, welcome to the show. Subject line, YouTube Comeback Player of the Year. Good afternoon, Nick. I've been a fan of yours for a while. I started watching your content right around the 2021 draft lottery video when we found out that Cade was going to be on the Pistons. I was also in the fantasy football league in which you infamously used $20 on Jared Goff. And then parenthetically, you were getting roasted, but he ended up having a great year, so it actually wasn't that bad of a pick. Yeah, we were doing an auction league, and it had never been explained to me how that worked. I've never done that before. Dude, that wasn't even the worst one. In the other league we did, I spent $52 on Odell Beckham Jr. Because that was the first draft we did. And again, nobody had explained to me how auction works. I didn't know how much money I had. I was just like, oh, nobody wants Odell. Like, I'll go like hard, and I want him. So that one was actually but yes, I do remember spending $20 on Jared Goff. All that being said, back to the email. All that being said, I can't help but laugh at some of the funny quips that you call giving fastballs through the mic, quote unquote. From the years of listening, I wanted to put together a list of my favorite Motown Noah buzzwords. Here are some of them that I've loved hearing. For all intents and purposes, the phrase spelled phonetically, which the email to the show is copingoursubs@gmail.com, spelled phonetically. The email will always be in the link or in the description of wherever it is that you listen to the show. Clarifying Jacob, a.k.a. Rusty Buckets. I'm mad at him right now. Oh, my God. Hey, I'll explain why I'm mad at him when I go on their podcast next Wednesday, which is happening. But I'm sorry, I'm going to get back to the email. I just don't want to forget to do this. Jacob, a.k.a. Rusty Buckets, Rudy, his producer, and Alex Hoops, they have a podcast on the channel, also Rusty Buckets, which is the channel that I edit videos on. I will be joining their podcast next week. We'll talk about that a little bit more on Monday. Let's just get back to the email. One of my favorites is, quote, it's time to punt on blank. Example, it's time to punt on the Washington Wizards. This one's been big because I've had a few people through comments and through emails tell me that they've adopted that, the whole punt thing. Truly, it matters more to me when you say something like that and when you're like expanding your vernacular because you listen to the show and like you change the language that you use because of things that I say. I care way more about that than when you're like, that Jayson Tatum take he had was like really nuanced. I think that's my new take now. I don't give a shit about that. My sports takes are stupid, but the way I speak is not. Back to the email. Historically, this person is blank. I can't think of historically, this person is. Do I say that? Like, if I'm talking about Jayson Tatum, I'm like, historically, this guy is. Do I say that? That's an interesting one. And then getting my shit off. That was used more on B and C, but still used. Yeah, I don't really say that on here that much. That was definitely like a B and C-ism. Is like, let me get my shit off, dude. You're definitely right about that. Anyways, I love what you have done with the show. And lastly, you have my vote for YouTube's Comeback Player of the Year. Parenthetically, you have a lot. Thank you very, very much for the email, Andrew. And with that, let's wrap up the show. Oscars are coming up on Sunday. Don't think I forgot. You think I fucking forgot that the Oscars are happening and you thought I wasn't going to talk about it? Sneaky, I'm not. I'm going to talk more about I'm going to do more of an Oscars recap than I'm going to do an Oscars preview. Because you want to know what the preview is? This is Christopher Nolan's night. This will be his moment. I don't know how many it's going to be. Oppenheimer is going to win at least 5. Okay? And then if it's not Oppenheimer, you know, the Zone of Interest is going to win Best International. It may win, are they going to give it sound design? I think they're going to have to give that to Oppenheimer too. Is Zone of Interest even in there for sound design? I don't remember if it is or not. Zone of Interest may win 1 or 2. It's definitely going to get Best International. You know, Barbie here and there is going to win some stuff. Are you going to hear from Anatomy of a Fall? I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. Poor Things may get if they get anything, it'll be like a cosmetic thing. Here's the real thing I want to talk about, because it's going to be Christopher Nolan's night. He's going to deserve it. This is going to be, as Bill Simmons puts it, his apex mountain. Okay? That's what this is going to be, and that's good. That's good. We should be rooting for that. The most interesting storyline to follow here is how little the Academy cares for Bradley Cooper. He does it the right way. he puts everything into these performances. This year it was for Maestro, and it's never going to be enough. If you look at what his career has been like, and, he's doing like The Hangover, and then all of a sudden he's in like Silver Linings Playbook, and we're taking him seriously as a dramatic actor, and we're like, whoa. And guess what happened? The Academy was like, buddy, not this year. And then he was like, that's fine. I'm going to come out with American Sniper. Which, propaganda and everything aside, it being like a wild movie to have made, I mean, that makes sense for Clint Eastwood. He embodied Chris Kyle in a way that was like just remarkable. Okay, his performance was breathtaking. He was amazing in that movie. Academy does not love him like that. Bradley Cooper says that's fine. What if I told you I'm going to star in my own movie and direct my directorial debut, the remake of A Star is Born? And what did the Academy say? The Academy said, that's nice, but how about that Rami Malek in Bohemian Rhapsody? An Oscar win, a Best Actor win that by the day gets sillier and sillier. A movie that came out at a time where all you had to do was be the lead in a biopic, and you were getting an Oscar, right? Maestro should have come out 5 years ago. Maybe Bradley Cooper would have gotten it then, right? So he comes out with Maestro, and it's another one. They just don't love him. I don't know when it's going to happen for Bradley Cooper, and maybe the other problem here is that he keeps coming out with these movies in years where it's like, dog, Leonardo DiCaprio, well, he did make Killers of the Flower, not make Killers of the Flower Moon, but he was in Killers of the Flower Moon. Like, no matter who you put up against Cillian Murphy this year, he's not going to lose, okay? Best Picture is interesting. If that goes to Oppenheimer, which I just think it is, Cillian Murphy's not losing. I don't know when Bradley Cooper is supposed to get this Oscar. He will get it at some point, and it's going to feel very Leonardo DiCaprio-esque. The circumstances are totally different. It's not a one-to-one. It is not a one-to-one. It's the principle of a guy who is sort of revered as, however you feel about Bradley Cooper, you're lying if you say he's a bad actor. He's not. He's not. He's fucking fantastic. You can say he's a weird dude. You can say, why do we keep hearing these weird quips from him in interviews? I would agree with you, but that's not what we're talking about here. Bradley Cooper's going to win one day, and it's going to be this huge sigh of relief that he finally got over the mountain. He finally got over the hump. But it's not happening this year. It's not happening for Maestro. Maybe he needs to star in like an Adam McKay. I'm just trying to think of a director who could like use Bradley Cooper in a way that is like as efficient as possible. It's not going to happen with Tarantino because he's done after this next movie. I really can't think of anybody off the top of my head. He might just have to direct another one of his own movies and just kind of use himself in the best way. But I just don't think we can keep doing these Oscar bait movies. I think he needs to just be fucking for real about it. Just a little bit. Got anything else for you guys? Oh, hey, you guys want to hear something that fucking sucked? I really buried the lead and didn't bring this up on Monday. And now that you know that my girlfriend is pregnant, this will hit a little bit harder. The night that we were about to move, so a week ago, last Friday, and that Thursday night, we spent the night at this apartment. It was completely empty. We just like blew up an air mattress. And on our way here, she's driving. We're driving down Lakeshore. We have our dog in the back seat in his cage. And it's kind of late at night. We're going like, if you live in Chicago, Lakeshore, the speed limit's like 40, but if you're not going 65, like that's a problem. Like you have to. And we're going like 60, 65 miles an hour down the freeway. Car just merges right into us. Right into us. Like they didn't look at all. They just, boom. They just go right into us as fast as we were going. And that was not fun. We immediately pull over and, obviously they just fucking kept going. They just sped off, whatever. The car was completely fine. Like it was weird. It was almost like we were going so fast that the impact just like didn't matter. Yeah, everybody was completely fine. It was just annoying to have to deal with that. And then we were just like, oh, is this our life now? And the problem is now is like every time we get on the freeway, because where we live now, it's like you either have to take Lakeshore or you have to get on 94. There are no other roads. You have to do one of those to get wherever you want to go. So we got to get on the freeway. And every time we're on there, man, it's like, it's fucked with me in a way that if you see a blinker on, or even if they don't have a blinker on and they're just next to you, I'm just like, please don't. And my heart rate just spikes. Like, it's crazy that like one thing, and that's that. And then it's only going to be exacerbated when we have a fucking kid in the backseat. How long did this show go for today? Hope it was a good one, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you guys have a good weekend. We will be back on Monday. If you're listening to this on Spotify, be sure to rate 5 stars. Make sure to watch the Oscars on Sunday. I don't have any prop bets or anything. This is my Super Bowl. Don't get it twisted. This is like the most important night of the year for me. I haven't really expressed that just because there's so much other shit going on. I just haven't really been able to convey that emotion to you guys. But this is my Super Bowl, the Oscars. So please watch it for me. I'm excited for Jimmy's monologue. Thank God it's Kimmel. If it was Fallon, I would debate not watching. Although it's ABC, so it makes sense that it's Kimmel, not Fallon, because it's not NBC. If you're watching this on YouTube, leave a like, subscribe. Nice little comment for the algorithm. I will catch you guys in the next one.
Beautiful.
Primary control.
Beautiful.
Primary control.
Beautiful.
Primary control.